Hello, everybody. This is Paul Tinkle for this week's 30 Minutes program, and I am very happy to talk to you about the United States Air Force. And I am really excited because I almost went to the Air Force, and I know there's a lot of stories behind how you got into the military, how you got into the Air Force, and so forth. And I've got Technical Sergeant Aaron Putnam, who lives right here in Martin, Tennessee, and he is a part of the United States Air Force. And let me just say, Sergeant, first off, it's a pleasure to have you here. I love the Air Force. I love the colors. I love what they do. There's 500,000 of these guys out there, and they're some of the best men in the world.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. It's good to be with you.
How did you become an Air Forceman?
Well, I joined the Air Force in 2012, and originally I was just looking to get some college benefits. I was a college dropout. I actually went to Auburn University in Alabama. I still am an Auburn fan, War Eagle, but college just wasn't for me, and I wanted to continue college, but I wanted to be in the workforce, and I wanted to work with my hands. So it was really twofold. It was to continue getting college benefits, and it was really just to be out in the world and to learn some skills with my hands. I knew I wanted to work on planes. My dad was a Navy pilot. He turned me into a plane nerd when I was a kid, and I knew I wanted to do something with aviation. So I worked at a seafood restaurant in Pensacola, Florida for a little bit and realized I didn't like that too much. But I talked with an Air Force recruiter, and he hooked me up with an aircraft hydraulics job. And the rest is history.
Now, was that in Alabama, or where did you?
So I went to Auburn for 2 years, and then I dropped out of college and I moved to Pensacola, Florida with my grandparents. And my family was living actually in Germany because my dad worked for the Department of Defense. I did my senior year of high school in Germany, so my family was still living in Germany. And then I came back overseas to go to college in Alabama. And then after college, after I dropped out, I moved with my grandparents in Florida. That's kind of my homestead, Pensacola, Florida. My mom and dad both grew up there, so that's kind of our little home. I lived there with my grandparents and then worked at a seafood restaurant called the Oyster Bar. I was a fry cook, and coming home every day smelling like greasy seafood was not. It was something to keep me busy and keep money flowing, but that's what I did after I dropped out of college, and so I came up with joining the Air Force, and I just wanted to learn some skills and ultimately better myself.
You know, most of the time kids want to know about the airplane, and I guess you've had a lot of experience with airplanes.
Yes, sir. So I was aircraft hydraulics. So if you look at a plane and you look at any flight control surface, like the rudder and the ailerons on the wings and the flaps and the elevators and everything, that's all controlled hydraulically. And the landing gear, right? You watch a plane take off and you see the landing gear come up and down. That's all controlled by hydraulics. And so that was my job. Mm-hmm. And I worked on the KC-135, which is a big tanker aircraft that is capable of aerial refueling.
Well, let's talk about the president for just a second. He's got a big plane. So tell me about that plane.
Air Force One. Its designation is VC-25. It's a big 747 from my understanding. I think that's the model. I don't know much about Air Force One other than that, because a lot of it's probably pretty classified, but it's a great big huge plane with a lot of moving parts and a lot of hydraulic lines. So they've got special maintainers that work on that aircraft. I don't know all the specifics about it, but that's about as far as I know. But it's basically a 747, which is the largest passenger. From my understanding, well, the A380 might be bigger, but the 747 is called the Queen of the Skies, and then it's outfitted specifically for the president. That's about as far as I know.
Well, that's enough to know enough about. Let me go back here for just a moment. Somebody came in to recruit you. Where did that happen? How did that happen?
Well, that was in Pensacola, Florida. So when I originally came up with the idea while I was in college, not paying attention to my American literature class. And after I dropped out, I moved to Pensacola, Florida to work at a seafood restaurant. Mm-hmm. And then I went to my recruiter's office in Pensacola, Florida.
So you knocked on the door?
Yes, I was the one. I was a walk-in, is what they call it. So when you walk up to the recruiter and knock on the door, and they come out to talk to you.
And does he say, or do you say, what makes you think you're good enough to be in the Air Force? Is that kind of a conversation that goes? Because I've heard that with the Marines.
So my recruiter, his name was Technical Sergeant Lombera, and he didn't ask me that question. He was really chill guy. I just walked in and he just kind of asked me a couple questions just to get to know me and getting to know why I was there. Like, hey man, what's up? What are you doing right now? Like, good to see you. He was just really friendly. He was a really friendly guy, very chill. And we just formed a great relationship. And immediately it was just I didn't feel pressured to do anything or to not do anything. He was just an easy guy to talk to. And he was great. How
long ago was that?
It might've been February of 2012 when I first walked into the office to talk to him, but I joined in April of 2012. So that's when I went to basic training.
So what happens at basic training?
Basic training is 7.5 weeks at Lackland Air Force Base, which is in San Antonio, Texas. And life in basic training, it's probably the easiest part about your career. I mean, I say that because you don't really need to organize anything. You just do what you're told. So, for example, you wake up probably like 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning and do PT, that's physical training. So you do your morning workout. After you finish your workout, they march you back to your dorm. In the Air Force, we call them dorms. In the Marines and the Army, they probably call them barracks, which is way more military. But the Air Force were a little bit more the chair force, is what you could say. But they march you back to your dorm, and then you take a shower, get all cleaned up, and then they march you to breakfast, your first meal of the day, or morning chow, whatever you want to call it. And then you do a series of drill practice. You have classroom time. Later on in training, you learn how to shoot the M4, which is the standard rifle that we use in the military, the Marines, the Army, the Air Force. You learn how to wear your gas equipment, like your chemical warfare gear and all that kind of stuff. And a couple of other things. You do a simulated deployment called Pacer Forge later on. I think it's around week 4 or 5 of basic training is when you do that. And then around at week 7, that's when you graduate, and then your family can come watch you.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get on the tarmac out there. Is that right?
They don't do it. They have a big outdoor auditorium. They actually constructed a brand new one a couple of years ago, and everybody marches out in a big formation, and then there's family all surrounding on all sides that are cheering you on. You recite the Airman's Creed, right? It's the big creed. I am an American airman. I've answered my nation's call. Everybody,
can you continue that on that right now?
You want me to recite the Airman's Creed?
Sure, I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Okay, well, it starts out, I am an American airman. I am a warrior. I've answered my nation's call. I am an American airman. My mission is to fly, fight, and win. I am faithful to a proud heritage, a tradition of honor, and a legacy of valor. I am an American airman, guardian of freedom and justice, my nation's sword and shield, its sentry and avenger. I defend my country with my life. I am an American airman, wingman, leader, warrior. I will never leave an airman behind. I will never falter, and I will not fail.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you did this. It's the first time I've ever had anybody do this, and I'm touched by the fact that you didn't know it was coming, but you've got it right up here and then down here in your heart, too.
Yeah, well, we recited it every morning at basic training, and you recite it a lot at basic training every morning, and then usually when you do a big ceremony, like when you promote, so if you go from airman first class to senior airman and so on and so forth, everybody will recite it in unison.
If you've just joined us today, thank you for listening. We have Tech Sergeant Aaron Putnam. He is from, Martin today. And this is, how long have you been in town, by the way? 2 years, 3?
Well, I live in Union City, but I do work here in Martin, and I've worked here for about 2.5 years-ish.
And your primary job is to recruit men and women for the Air Force.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So let me take a little bit about where we are today with the United States Air Force. I frankly think the world of the Air Force. I have great respect for the men and women that are part of the Air Force. And it's about 500,000? Is that what we have, Air Force?
It's probably about that number, counting active duty plus reserve plus Air National Guard. So I would say, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's probably 300 to 500,000.
I'm just looking over some of the things that I prepped on, and mottos: aim high, fly, fight, win. Integrity first. Service before self. Excellence in all we do. You've heard those before.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And what do all of these things mean to you personally?
Well, the core values, integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do, I talk about that pretty frequently to high school students. And all it means, integrity first is just doing the right thing, doing the right thing when no one is watching. That's the first thing. And that all that means is don't be afraid to, I don't want to say follow the rules necessarily. I mean, you do want to follow rules, but don't be afraid to stand out. And like if someone's telling you, hey, do this, it's okay, nobody will know. It's like, well, I'll know. And so you take ownership. It's really just about taking ownership for yourself and your own actions. So doing the right thing when you're supposed to and when nobody's watching.
Did you have any reservations after you got into boot camp, we'll call it?
Oh, when I got into boot camp?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean by reservations?
Oh, I mean, I really think I didn't make the best decision to come here. But sometimes, you want to back out, but you were all in, right?
Well, I'll be totally honest. I'm a really honest guy with this kind of stuff. My first couple of weeks in basic training were a little bit hard. It was challenging, and there was a voice in my head that says, why did I do this? I kind of regret it a little bit, but what you'll hear at basic training is the quickest way out is to graduate. And that to me is a great lesson in life in general. It just teaches you, just don't back out. Keep pressing forward, believe in yourself, and you're going to be so surprised by what you're capable of when you're challenged. So I am so grateful for basic military training. It was hard. A lot of people might mistake thinking Air Force basic training is going to be easy. Like, a lot of people say Air Force basic training is the easiest one as opposed to the Army or the Marines or the Navy. And I don't know what the other branches do. I know Marine Corps basic training is probably pretty challenging, but what you don't want to believe is that it's just going to be easy. Most of my applicants say, man, it was harder than I thought it was going to be. But I always tell people, I mean, anything worth doing is not going to be easy. It's going to challenge you, and that's a great thing. So I knew about week 3 in that, man, this is hard, and kind of second guessing a little bit. Why did I do this? But I'm so grateful when I graduated and my dad came to my graduation. I was so grateful by the end of it that I made it through.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have several commanders, but the guy at the top happens to be the President of the United States. Who are the commanders of the United States Air Force?
Yeah, so you got President Donald Trump, or the Honorable. We in the military, we always call our president the Commander-in-Chief, and we refer to him as the Honorable Donald J. Trump. Before him, it was the Honorable Joe Biden, and before him is the Honorable Barack Obama. So he's our Commander-in-Chief, right? So he's basically the commander of our whole military, the head honcho, right? And then you got the Secretary of Defense, which is Pete Hegseth, and he makes all the major military decisions. You have the Secretary of the Air Force, Troy Mink, and he makes all the decisions specifically with the Air Force. And you got the Air Force Chief of Staff. He's the highest ranking enlisted member of the Air Force. So, or excuse me, not enlisted member, he's a general. So General Kenneth Wilsbach, and then you have the Vice Chief of Staff, General John Lemonton.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, which is David Wolf, and he's the highest ranking enlisted member of the Air Force. So together they represent the hierarchy, the chain of command in the Air Force. And so together, it's the big decisions are made and they flow down from there, and then the bigger decisions, it's like a tree, right? The decisions flow from the head guy down to the lower ranking guys, and it's a flow of decision making, and it's very important with any organization.
Start me over for just a second. So once you come in and decide to become a member of the United States Air Force, and then you go through the training, and then you become what?
So once you graduate basic training, you're now officially an airman in the Air Force. And then after that, you go to your tech school. So tech school is where you go to learn your job. So for example, for me, I was aircraft hydraulics, and I went to Shepherd Air Force Base, which is also in Texas. We have a lot of Air Force bases in Texas.
Why is that? There's a lot of land out there. So.
There's a lot of land. It's very flat out in Texas, and flat land, you might know this already, but flat land makes for very good runways. So same thing with Florida, right? Florida's really flat, and there's a lot of military bases in Florida as well. So Shepherd Air Force Base is where I did my tech school, which is in northern Texas, and that's where you learn your job. So after that, you become basically certified at your job, and then you move on to your first duty location, which could be anywhere in the United States or around the world.
Those of you who are just tuning in, or maybe you've been with it, or maybe you're a parent, or maybe you want to talk to the sergeant that we have here today, and his office is located here in Martin, Tennessee. So we'll talk about that here for just in a second. But you get a lot of questions coming in there, and you've got not just the United States Air Force, but there are some other branches that are nearby as well.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So if you ever want to come visit me at my office, I'm at 113 Regina Street, which is just near Los Portales, the Mexican restaurant, and the Subway. So and we got Dollar General too. So pretty hard to miss.
So the thing that I think people, parents perhaps, maybe feel as though their child, their son or daughter, have come to that point where maybe they needed some encouragement, and let's make something out of yourself because you don't know what you want to do. Consider going into the military, and that's where you and your colleagues have to put on the best face you can and tell them all of the things that they need to hear, but then also the things that they need to know.
I like to think of myself as an honest guy. I'm not a salesman type. I'm not going to be the smiling salesman that's promising the world. I love to talk to people in a very honest way. That's just who I am. And maybe that's my downfall. Maybe I could recruit more people if I promised more, but I'm a really honest guy. I'm going to tell you like it is. I'll tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. I've been in the Air Force for 14 years, so I've seen a lot in my time, and I plan on doing at least 6 more years so I can get my full 20 and get my retirement benefits. But I've loved my time in the Air Force. I wouldn't trade it for the world. The experience has been great. It really has. Between all the traveling and the culture I got to witness being deployed overseas, and meeting my wife and having our children, and if you want your life moving, the Air Force is a great thing that you can do. It gets you moving, and it gets you experiencing a lot of things you've never done before.
When you took the oath, what did it feel like?
It felt real. It felt scary, intimidating, really cool. Like, oh man, what am I getting myself into right now? It felt like I was rising up into something so much bigger than myself. And it was intimidating, but it was also exciting at the same time.
You know, a lot of young people, and you have to be what age? 18 with a...
You just have to be 17 years old.
17?
Yeah, between the ages of 17 and 42 years old to join the Air Force. Yes,
You're
sir.
telling me that somebody that 39 years of age, they can become a part of the United States Air Force?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I think that's one of the secrets that has not been told until today. I feel like that. I thought maybe up to 25 years of age, but you're telling me 42?
Yes, sir. 42 years old is the maximum age. So,
have you recruited anybody in that period of time?
I've put in a few people that were close. I'm 35 myself. I've put in someone who was a little bit older than me. I've put in a 37-year-old. I think that's the max. So I think that's the highest. I think that's the oldest person I put in was someone who was 37, and she's actually at basic military training right now.
You said it's a woman?
Yes, sir.
Well, do you have more women than men nowadays?
So, I mean, the military is going to be more male-dominated just because the types of jobs are more geared towards interests that men have generally. But I get a lot of young women who want to join the military as well. A lot of young women who want to get into the medical field, or they want to get into aircraft maintenance or cybersecurity. There's very bright young men and women And in fact, I have someone here with me right now who's a young woman who graduated from Obion County Central High School. And she's one of the best applicants I've ever had. And she's helping me do recruiter duties for the next 2 weeks. It's called RAT, Recruiter's Assistance Program. So for those of you listening, if you have someone who's worried about leaving home and not being able to come back home because they're doing the military thing, they can come home for 2 weeks, basically get free leave. Well, it's not necessarily leave, because you do have to work, because you're helping me to do normal recruiter duties, like go around to businesses and leave posters or brochures or go visit schools. But you get to be home for 2 weeks, and it doesn't count against your normal leave. So, and you get 30 days of leave per year.
You know, you don't think about it so much, but it seems as though, it just seems that the whole world has changed over the last, well, since you decided to become an airman. And I go back to that question is, how has it changed?
Oh, so when I joined in 2012, I can't remember exactly it seems like the world is always going crazy. I wasn't so concerned about what was going on. I just wanted to help my country. I wanted to serve my country in whatever way I could. But I come from a big military family as well. I mean, my dad was deployed whenever I was born. He was in Desert Storm. So there's always a conflict going on, and I was thinking about what can I do to help. And I knew that no matter what was going to happen in the world, I wanted to be of service to my country. So as it progressed, we had in 2014, 2015, Russia invaded Crimea. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, Crimea. And then, of course, we had ISIS, all of that stuff kick off. I was deployed in Al Udeid, Qatar, whenever that happened. And so we were supporting the mission over there. And then, of course, later on, we've got Syria, and we have things going on in Iraq, too. In Afghanistan, the pullout from Afghanistan, and then now we have the conflict going on in Iran, and a lot of people are worried about all that stuff going on and being bogged down and stuff. And what I always tell people is just war is part of what the military does. I mean, that's kind of what we're specialized in doing. But if you believe in our country, then why not fight for it?
That's a great statement that you just made, and it's to give back to what you've been given.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So the step that someone walks into the door to be recruited, or at least think they want to be in the United States Air Force, or for that, it could be any of it. But what is it that sets the Air Force aside than others?
Well, the Air Force is going to give you, in some, and this is what I tell everyone. I am not one to talk down to any other branches like the Marines. My older brother was a Marine. Semper Fi. I love my Marine brothers and sisters. They're amazing individuals. I love my brothers and sisters in the Army or in the Navy or the Coast Guard. What makes the Air Force different is the types of jobs we do, first and foremost. So we specialize in aviation. And you got aviation in the Navy as well. You got it in the Marines. You got it in the Army and the Coast Guard. Everybody's got some aspect of aviation, but the Air Force is the largest Air Force in the world by far. It's the largest Air Force the world has ever seen. And so if you want to get into something involving aviation, that is where the Air Force is going to help you out the most. Secondly, and this is actually something I hear from other military members. They say, like, for example, if I have someone who served in the Army, they go visit an Air Force base and they look at all the nice facilities, and kind of jokingly they say, man, I should have joined the Air Force. We do have the better quality of life. So we're going to have the nicer facilities, the nicer dining facilities, and the dorms, and maybe the food's better. And that's not me downplaying any other branches, because some people want to join the Army and they want, if you want to go ruck and be in the mud and get the military experience, you can go join the Army or the Marines. If that's what you want to do, go for it. It just depends on what you're really looking to get out of the military.
The 5 core missions of the Air Force have not changed dramatically since the Air Force became independent in 1947. I was just reading that, but they have now, the United States Air Force has evolved and have been articulated as a super and I would use that word loosely here, Seporia. This is global integrating. We're talking about things. When you're talking about being a United States airman, airwoman, I hope that was okay to say those words.
You could say airman.
Airman and airwoman, okay. So, but when we talk about the United States Air Force, the one thing that the United States Air Force does better than anybody else is what? What would you say that it is?
I would say the one thing the Air Force does better than anyone else is set someone up for civilian life. So, and again, this is not me talking down to any of the other branches, but I believe serving in the Air Force prepares you to re-enter back into civilian life better than the other branches. You're not going to be, because again, this is kind of the term that we embrace it. We own this, the chair. A lot of people call us the chair force because we're kind of the comfy branch. The benefit of that is you're much less at risk to get injured while serving in the Air Force, because the jobs that we have, in the Army and the Marines, you have infantry and artillery where you're going to be lifting heavy stuff and paratrooping, or jumping out of planes in a parachute. You have more of a risk of getting injured doing those things. And again, if that's what you want to do, we need those people. Like, God bless those people for doing that. But the jobs in the Air Force are not going to be as inclined to cause injury. So like fixing planes, you're always going to have a risk of getting injured and stuff, and having hydraulic fluid and fuel, being exposed to those chemicals and all that kind of stuff. But you're not going to be as prone to getting injured. So you're going to probably stay healthy. And the Air Force gives you great college benefits to help prepare you to re-enter into civilian life, to go in with a degree and all that kind of stuff.
Sergeant Putnam, let me give the last words to you, since you are the recruiter here in Northwest Tennessee. And we need to tell them when you're open, when the doors are open, and more than anything else, how old. We talked about that a moment ago, to recite it again. But the most important thing is having a connectivity with somebody like you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the requirements are pretty simple. You just have to be between the ages of 17 and 42 years old. You have to be, ultimately, you do need to fulfill your high school credentials. There are some stipulations to that. If you're like a high school junior, you can start your process as long as you're 17. You got to get parental consent to go to MEPS and process. MEPS is the Military Instruments Processing Station down in Memphis. There's one usually in every major city. There's one in Nashville. There's one in Memphis. So a 17-year-old needs his parents' permission to process. And then as long as you're on track to graduate high school, that's really the main requirement. You can still join even if you don't have your diploma. It just depends on your ASVAB. That's the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, the test that you take to join. So if you're not a high school graduate, if you don't have a GED or anything, you have to score at least a 65 on the ASVAB. If you have your GED, you have to score at least a 50. But if you have your high school diploma, like that's most people generally graduate high school and they have their diploma. You only need a 31 to actually qualify for the Air Force. You do want to have a higher score just so you can qualify for more jobs. And then, of course, you got the medical requirements. And that's where we're kind of digging into the weeds there. Whatever medical conditions you have, that's something that we'll talk about, whether it's asthma or any type of heart condition or any other lung condition or any other mental illness like anxiety, depression, or any learning disabilities like ADD, ADHD. It's kind of digging into the weeds, like I said, but it's a case-by-case basis, and we'll talk about that. But any questions that anyone has, that's where I come in, and then we go through the process, and we'll find out if it's waiverable or not.
113 Regina Street, Martin, Tennessee, 731-571-6727. That's 571-6727. Technical Sergeant Aaron Putnam, thank you so much.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.